Hello, everyone. Welcome to yet another conversation. Today, I have my good friend Jay Matthews. We actually met through the Portfolio of Small Bets community with Daniel Vassallo, and I was really intrigued by his background in traditional book publishing. So, of course, being me, I would immediately unfriended him and was like bombarding you with like, tell me more about how this whole thing works.
Yeah.
So I'm hoping our conversation together will tell you the secrets to getting a traditional book deal. So before I go on and on, Jay, I would love for you to introduce yourself.
Sure. And thank you for giving me something to put in my copy, the secrets. Yeah, that's what I need to do. I need to unveil the secrets. Well, actually, what attracted me to you, Kristen, was we have a similar background in science. So I have a PhD in chemical engineering, and I did research for a few years, and then I decided to become a science journalist. And I did that for a few years, and then they sort of forced me to edit book reviews for the magazine I was working with, and I turned out I loved it, and it just reminded me of how much I loved books growing up and loved the process of making books, which is something that was intriguing to me. But I didn't
Mhm.
have a lot of experience with that, so when I was actually approached by MIT Press because they were looking for a physics, engineering, and math editor, and because I had that background and that connections in the physics and engineering and math, well, not math, but the physics and engineering communities, they thought that I would be able to learn on the spot how to be an editor. And it
Mhm.
actually has worked out well. I've been doing it for the last 6 years. I think by the time this is going to appear, I will no longer be with the press because I'm actually going to walk away and pursue new opportunities. But yeah, I'm happy to share my experience over the last 6 years doing traditional publishing and working with authors.
Yeah. Oh gosh, I totally forgot about the science background commonality.
Yeah, we've got the
Oh,
science connection. And let me say up front as well that my name, if you Google me, it's Jeremy Matthews. I go by J in communities, and sometimes I even go by JNA. That's my uh, first initial and middle initials. But J is good, Jeremy is good as well.
wonderful. Yes, definitely. And people can find you on your website, right? I just want to mention this up front.
JNAMatthews.com. Yeah.
Perfect. Yeah, so I'm imagining explosions and you walking away with your sunglasses from your 6 years in publishing. But
Yeah.
tell us more about what is your new path and how does it relate to the publishing world?
Yeah. I mean, it kind of goes back to when I joined Small Bets community about, I think, a year ago. And maybe you were in there for at least a year or two before that, probably. But what attracted me to that concept was it spoke to me as someone who loved to just come up with new ideas and build.
Mhm.
And I was in a sort of like a cycle of jumping from job to job and trying to build careers around things that I didn't really have full control over,
Mm.
creative control.
Hmm.
And so I think the thing that I'm seeking now in the next phase of my life is a little bit more creative control.
Hmm.
And we can talk a little bit later about what I want to do with book coaching and this new academy that I'm building. I'm trying to be a little bit more like you, Kristen. You sort of set the path for me, and leaving science and building communities and
Hmm.
building courses and booklets and books and things like that. So, I mean, I'm just attracted to that because I crave creative autonomy and
Hmm.
creative freedom, and it's just something that I'm really excited to pursue.
Yeah. And I think many of us are like we're bonded by this same desire, right? Like we want to have this entrepreneurial pursuit, but it's really an expression of creativity and care for other folks.
Yeah.
And then I think especially as I'm like embarking on writing coaching myself, what I'm seeing is that there's many folks who want to be able to stand out in a world of relatively shallow content. There's a lot of folks with really technical expertise, and they want to be able to use like the format of a book or something that's a little bit more lengthy and in depth in order to showcase that expertise. And like what I've like witnessed is like myself and many folks out there, like we know about self-publishing, like to some extent. It's like, relatively easy for anyone to like set up a Gumroad, etc. However, as you know as well, there's 90% marketing, right? Like there you can publish a book, but it would be nicer if there's someone to read it. And
Yeah.
like there's a lot that we can do in terms of digital marketing and building authentic readership along the way, so that there is an audience for the book. However, traditional publishing has, like, to me, like the advantage of established channels that can help you get the word out there beyond what we can normally do as for example, a solopreneur. So I was wondering, like, from your perspective, like what do people need to know in order to get a traditional book publishing deal? And is your academy help with that?
Yeah. So, I mean, it's funny. Just a few days ago, someone who is well known in the physics community wanted to write his fourth book, and he was disappointed with sales. And so he
Mm,
said, "What does your press do?" And so it allowed me to think a little bit about what makes traditional publishing worthwhile and what makes a successful book in traditional publishing. And so I came up with these 7 steps or these 7 criteria. And
mm-hmm,
the first one is the author credibility. So I think in traditional publishing, publishers want an author who is knowledgeable and credible on the topic. So in self-publishing, you don't, it's just a topic that matters. People are going to Google or search in Amazon for a particular topic, how to do X, Y, and Z. And they're not as careful about who wrote the book. I mean, they might look at a bio, they may not investigate that person that much. In traditional publishing, you're really the publisher is really investing in the author just as much as the topic.
mm-hmm,
And then the second thing was how often has the author been engaging on the topic? Because someone might have a PhD in astrophysics and they may know a lot about black holes because they have the degree. But have they been writing on that topic? Have they been speaking on that topic?
mm-hmm,
So publishers are looking for that. So if you have those 2 things, those are like two of the most important things. The third thing is a following. If you
mm-hmm,
want to write a book for a large audience, you should hopefully already have cultivated an audience, whether it's on LinkedIn, Twitter,
mm-hmm.
Instagram, somewhere like that, TikTok. So those are 3 huge things, and I find that a lot of people, especially in academia, who want to write books, they are offended
Mm-hmm.
that publishers are looking for that. They think you come to a publisher, and as you just said, there are established channels and markets,
Mm-hmm.
and everything will be dandy.
Mm-hmm.
I have a PhD in this topic. It should do well, but
Right.
it doesn't do well anymore because now these books are competing with people who have large audiences.
Mm-hmm.
So, it's unfortunately and fortunately, everyone who approaches a traditional publisher should have already done the work of of building their audience.
Right. And then for folks who are listening, and if you're a creator, you're at this point you're going, huh, wait a minute. Essentially, I like it's all the things that you need to be a successful creator
Exactly.
already. Um,
Exactly. Yeah.
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 And it's because like I remember actually it is like Daniel Bassel who pointed this out. Like book publishers are in a sense also betting.
Yeah.
And they want to make sure that their bets will pan out. And the way they can qualify the bets is to make sure that you already are credible with the platform.
Yeah. Daniel used a sort of comparison to VCs. And
Exactly.
I
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
think it's a fair one.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's a fair one because there are some bets that publishers will make in the hopes that maybe they know the first book might not do well, but the second book might do better.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a lot of betting. And if you are someone who wants a publisher to bet on you, my goal with my academy, with it's going to be a course.
Mm-hmm.
It's to help you sort of really measure yourself,
Mm-hmm.
evaluate yourself against these metrics.
Mm-hmm.
The next one is originality. So the topic should be fairly original, whether in the information that you're presenting or in the way you're presenting it.
Mm-hmm.
And then the next one is exceptional writing. I have it fifth in the list, which most people will say that doesn't make sense. You want a well-written book, but writing is something that I think can be taught, and
Mm-hmm.
hopefully courses such as the ones that you are offering and others are offering to help people become better writers, or at least become more comfortable in their
Mm-hmm.
writing. Those things can be learned. And then, we can even talk a little bit about generative AI and how that can help you write and Grammarly and things. So that, I think, to me, that's sort of the presentation of the information.
Mm-hmm.
I don't put it as high on the list as others might. But then the last two, for me in my framework here, is the accessibility of the topic. So it's got to be relatable to a wide range of people. I get people coming to me talking about really cool scientific topics,
Mm-hmm.
but most people can't relate to the topic, like say quantum mechanics. Like, how does that relate to everyday life?
So does this depend on the type of press you're targeting though? I'm imagining it depends on who you're trying to reach in the press specialty.
That's a good question. I mean, I think it's not so much dependent on the press, but on the audience.
Mm-hmm.
So, and in some sense, that depends on the press. Some
Oh,
public,
I see how it relates to what you said about platform, because if you have a very niche topic,
yeah,
then you're not going to get the number of readers that you would want for there to
exactly.
be supportive platform. Hmm.
Just like with being a creative person or an entrepreneur,
Hmm.
it's all about the audience.
Yeah.
Publisher is, in a sense, like Sony. They're the distributor
Mm-hmm.
of your information. They're
Mm-hmm.
your partner. They'll help you market it and everything. But really, if the audience is small,
Mm-hmm.
the outcome will be small.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think some academic presses, for example, will publish really big books
Mm-hmm.
that are for really large audiences. But big publishers are not going to publish niche books that an
Mm-hmm.
academic press would publish.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're someone who has a niche topic, I would start for sure with an academic. If you have really a topic that you think is going to reach a lot of people, you could go either way.
Mm.
So yeah, and then I think the last thing would be author publisher fit. And I guess that
Mm.
sort of lends right into what we're talking about. Find a publisher that really gets excited about the book and is willing to run with it, and is willing to commit to it, and is willing to make your book near the
Mm-hmm.
front of the catalog. And the reason why that's important, I think, if you're going for a large audience, is that you want to find a publisher that really thinks your book works for them,
Mm-hmm.
right? And because it's called priorities. If you're who's a really good artist, but that's not the biggest artist in the world, right? If you're sort of an indie artist that a lot of people know, and you are in the same catalog with Taylor Swift, you
Mm-hmm.
know, you're gonna come behind her, right? So that if you both have the same publishers,
Yeah.
she's gonna be they're gonna give her more attention.
This is really like niche and tangential, but yes, there's this band called the band Perry that I think was
There
at
you
some
go.
point in the same like label as Taylor Swift, and they got a little bit sidelined.
Yeah,
So you're
exactly.
correct.
Yeah, I mean that's exactly right. So you want to be a big fish in a small.
Hmm. For sure. So to do you mind recapping the list really
Sure,
quickly?
sure, sure. I mean, I think it's really, I could combine them into three sections. One is your
Hmm.
own platform,
Hmm.
based on your authority, the work you've done on the topic, writing and speaking, and based on just the size of your audience, particularly social media. Then it's about the topic, how original is it? How good of a writer you are at presenting that topic,
Hmm.
how accessible the topic is. And then the
Hmm.
last one is, finding the right partner for you.
Right.
Not every publisher, don't go after the biggest publisher. It doesn't really
Hmm.
matter. Right?
Hmm.
they all have access to the same channels.
Oh, that's
Yeah,
interesting. Can you say more about that?
sure. I mean, so Penguin Random House
Mm-hmm.
has the same access as an academic press. Well, okay, so Penguin Random House has the largest distribution in the world. But
Mm-hmm.
we mean MIT Press, is also distributed by Penguin Random House.
Mm-hmm.
Only difference between the two is the size of the marketing budget. So if our top book, I don't know how much they spend on marketing, but if we spend the same amount on marketing as they do,
Mm-hmm.
more than likely, not more than likely, it'll go to the same booksellers, book buyers. It will go to the same bookstores. It's going to go obviously to Amazon, Barnes and Noble. It's all the people that care about buying these books and selling them to retailers
Mm-hmm.
will see both books.
I see. So
Yeah.
it's about how much they're willing to spend on marketing you.
It at the end of the day, it boils down to the marketing, which is what I
Mm.
mentioned, is you want to be the bigger fish.
Yeah. Oh gosh. Big fish, small pond applies to so many areas in life, as you know.
Yeah, yeah.
Ah. So, with the clients I've worked with so far, I often tell them it's a chicken and egg problem, right? Like if you want to be a traditionally published author, you need to prove with your platform and your credibility. But without that, you can't go to them. So that's why I encourage them to self-publish and to start building their own readership so
Yeah.
that their next book can potentially be traditionally published. So I'm imagining for your potential audience, there's almost like two camps I can see. Like one is super high credibility, like the professorial types, academic types with no audience. And then there is the creator type who can potentially build an audience, but may not have traditional credibility.
Yeah, yeah. I am actually going after self-publishing folks as well, not just
Mm-hmm.
traditional publishing
Like
folks.
these two groups, right?
Yeah, yeah. And what really my goal is to help them really understand the editorial,
Mm-hmm.
the design, production, and the marketing and sales of the book cycle.
Mm.
And how when you create a book proposal, whether it's for yourself or
Mm-hmm.
for an editor or publisher to consider,
Mm-hmm.
how this in a sense like a business plan or a pitch deck um, really gives them a sense on how likely this book is to succeed.
Mm.
So my goal is to educate any author, whether they're traditionally publishing or self-publishing,
Mm-hmm.
on the importance of thinking about about all these things up front.
Yeah. So that they have I'm imagining that it's like a poker game. I don't know
Yeah,
whether this is a healthy
I
analogy or not.
don't know much poker, so let's try.
Some kind of board game where
Yeah, okay.
information is important, and we like it is important for the author or like the author who's going to work with the publisher to be prepared, right? Because it's a lot of
Yeah,
negotiations involved, and if you don't know what
yes,
you're getting into, you might actually not get a good deal, and then that may make you sad.
yeah, yeah, and even more than the deal, it's just
Mm-hmm.
helping you have real clarity on
Mm.
where you're going,
Mm-hmm.
right? I mean, I think the readers deserve that, right? It's basically the way an entrepreneur would think about what is the problem I'm trying to solve
Mm-hmm.
and for who.
Mm-hmm.
And after that, you have to think about what is the best way of letting people know that you have the solution,
Mm-hmm.
right? So the book deal it's not hard for most people with credibility to get a book deal.
Mm-hmm.
It's certainly not hard for anyone to self-publish.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not really trying to solve the problem of getting a book deal, although I think maybe some of the draft copy I've written right now is sort of pushing that, you know, do a book proposal that publishers won't be able to resist. But really,
Mm.
my goal is to do a book proposal that gives incredible clarity, such that when your readers pick up your book,
Mm-hmm.
they know what it's about, and that you know how to reach the audience once you're done writing the book. Are you familiar with Rob Fitzpatrick? He community called Write Useful Books?
Yes, that's actually that is one of the books I refer to a lot. It's a really well written book.
Yeah, yeah,
Mhm.
yeah. I like Rob. I think I've spoken with him before,
Oh, wonderful.
and yeah, and I think I want to go a step beyond where Rob has gone and
Mhm.
really sort of discuss the production aspect of especially in traditional publishing, right?
Mhm.
The cost of making a book. So you might say,
Yeah.
"Oh, I want color in my book," and I'll kind of teach you why that's rarely a good idea,
Mm-hmm.
or rarely necessary. So,
I
I'm going
see.
to sort of teach people sort of the ins and outs so that they don't go to publishers and they're disappointed or they think that they're being cheated. Because
Mm-hmm.
more often than not, it's not the case, right?
Right.
Both sides want to see success.
Mm-hmm.
It's rarely a competition. It's really a collaboration.
For sure. And I think there's so many moving parts to have for the successful book launch that there's like
There's so
a
many
lot of
moving.
information that we need to learn.
You hit the nail on
Um,
the head.
yeah. So I have a couple of friends who have gone through traditional publishing or like are in the midst of it. And my understanding is that it helps to have an editor slash agent who can help you with this publisher like pitching process.
Yeah.
So can you tell us more about, okay, let's just say we can pretend I was gonna make up a name. I blanked for a second there. Let's make up a name of a person
Yeah.
who is our ideal creator.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna make up like Scott. I just made up this name. Like Scott
Okay.
is a creator with a mid-sized audience,
Yeah.
and like has an idea for a traditionally published book. What is the next step?
Mm. So most publishers require you to approach them with an agent through an
Mm-hmm.
agent. Uh, I guess inside tip for or pro tip, as they say, for people who want to publish a what we call a trade book. Trade book is a book for a general audience.
Mm-hmm.
An academic press might be a smart way to get a trade book published without an agent.
Mm.
So you'll find, I mean, I've published, I'm not going to brag on my books right now, but I've published some books that have done very well for a general audience
Mm-hmm.
that I've heard that some bigger presses wish they hadn't passed on,
Mm-hmm.
because my author didn't have an agent. And so he came to us and the book did really well and it's won
Mm-hmm.
awards and so on and so forth.
Mm.
What tends to happen is that our authors then go and get an agent after their book does well with us,
Mm-hmm.
and the agent sells it to, and this is the difference. I wanted to go back and clarify something. This is the difference between an academic press and a bigger house, is that they have deeper pockets.
Mm-hmm.
So if they want to get a book or they want to publish Barack Obama or someone with a really big name and platform,
Mm-hmm.
they will throw stupid money after, right? I think the Obama's got what, 40 or 20 million dollars for 2 books or something,
Oh,
right?
okay.
So
So
there's
that's why
no
Scott, like my imaginary person, is
let's
the
talk
one
about
who's more
Scott. Yeah.
relatable to us.
Let's talk about Scott. So what
Yeah.
Scott would
So.
want to do, if Scott has a big enough audience, an agent might say, I'm willing to work with you. But I'm
Mm-hmm.
gonna, in this day and age, the credibility part is important. So if Scott is a creative person, he's got, let's say, 20,000 people on Twitter that follow him,
Mm-hmm.
but he doesn't really have like this level of expertise on the topic beyond just the following.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure an agent is going to go for them unless he has everything else. Scott's
Mm.
been writing about, let's call it, what are some of the things people do in in the small bets community? Let's say newsletters. Yeah, let's say you
Mm-hmm.
want to write it. Let's say it's like Louis, right? Throwing up a real name. I know we're supposed to be using fake names, but
Oh, it's so funny. It's okay. I'm sure Louis would love a book deal, maybe.
oh sure, yeah, yeah.
So
So
thanks, Louis. We're
so
gonna use you as an example. I would say he's a very good example, right? Like he's a
yes,
very successful creator. He has a certain
yes.
point of view.
Yeah, and he's a great example because he's building his platform.
Mm-hmm.
I've been reading him on Substack lately. Um, he's got probably a growing audience.
Mm-hmm.
What he doesn't have that I think the traditional publishing world, for better and for worse, will look at is Louis is, I think, a software engineer. He's not a writer. He's not a someone who studied the marketing of newsletters or the business of newsletters per se. He's sort of done it practically,
Mm-hmm.
but that might be the only sort of weakness in his profile.
Mm-hmm.
And so he may or may not get a deal with he may or may not get interest from an agent. So assuming he doesn't, my summary is he needs to put together a strong book proposal and approach an academic press.
Ah, okay. So that's the one way that most creators can potentially think about is like you can skip the agent part altogether and go
Yes.
for the press directly. That's wonderful.
If they're not going to self-publish.
So it's like the in between the totally traditional path with the agent and the self-publishing path.
I would almost recommend Louis or Scott or whoever
Mhm.
with that profile to self-publish.
Oh, because the additional benefit of academic press is not enough.
Because I think a traditional publisher, regardless,
Hmm.
may still not have the enthusiasm for Louis' book. They'll say, okay, he has enough of a platform, we'll be able to sell
Hmm.
10,000 copies, right?
Hmm.
But booksellers, like bookstores, are not. That's the thing, right? There's a lot of gatekeeping in traditional publishing. So let's bash it for a little bit,
Hmm.
right? There's a lot of gatekeeping. It's based on individuals like myself and bookstore owners and a lot of people who sort of make flawed assumptions
Hmm.
about what's going to make a successful book,
Hmm.
right? Some of it is based on reason,
Hmm.
but some of it is based on intuition.
Hmm.
And so I think Louis is in that position where people are going to have divergent opinions on how successful his book would be.
Mm.
In which case, I say, Louis, just self-publish it and market it yourself. You'll make more money for sure, probably, likely
Right.
self-publishing.
Hmm.
But if your goal, Louis, is to get some credibility, because long term you want to leverage that into speaking, into maybe another bigger book,
Hmm.
it might be worth going with a traditional publisher, even though the sales might not be as great as if you self-publish. But now you have the stamp of approval
Hmm.
from someone who took a bet on you.
Mm. So traditional publishing is ironically not a good revenue play. It's actually a credibility play.
It's definitely a credibility play. Yeah.
Mm. Okay. Okay. So why would one want credibility in this day and age? What a dangerous question I just asked.
And that's honestly a great question, because
Mhm.
I think it's sort of a lazy way to get credibility is to get a book traditionally published. The harder way is to grind it out the way a
Mhm.
lot of people we know do
Mhm.
it on Twitter and LinkedIn.
Yeah.
It's the harder way, but it's the more financially rewarding way as
Mhm.
well.
Mhm.
But when I think about it now, like I'm thinking on the spot about it,
Mhm.
the world really still respects the gatekeepers, right? That's why
Right.
mainstream media is as powerful
I
as it
think
is.
it's more like tastemakers. I think
Yeah,
especially
yeah,
now with AI, it's like then curation is actually the way in which we can tell what the information is good or not. And
yeah.
sadly,
Good
um,
point.
we would need to rely on these traditional structures. And then I think the other like my imaginary benefit of why I would do traditional publishing is like I always say I want to reach that person in middle America who is watching Ellen and Oprah. You can see my references already dated. Or like Kelly Clarkson.
Yeah,
Like the only
yeah,
way to reach those folks is actually often through traditional publishing, right? Because like
yeah,
that's how you can get in front of the true mass market of America
yeah,
with a world-changing idea.
yeah. How would you describe the people that you are coaching or want to coach
Mhm.
into writing? At
Good
where
question.
where do they? where do they fit? High
So they're
credibility.
not. I'm not judging the yes person watching Ellen, as far as I know. Yes, that is the I think the interesting part, right? That these are not currently my clients. So I think that's why I'm refining a lot of my ideas through my current clients who are much more of a highly technical professional who
Okay.
want to be online writers, who have diverse interests. Like that is like a certain persona. But I think like my dream for like not now but like several years from now is like what can I gain from this whole idea of using writing as a form of self-discovery and a form of healing, and then like with that then can there be like a Marie Kondo spark joy level of the same message that is a lot more palatable and easy for the average person to do.
Right. Right. Okay. Okay. So what about yourself? Is that,
Mm-hmm.
is that, how do you think about the audience that you want to reach with books you want to write?
Good question. I feel like I've been contemplating this on like a engaged spirituality level, like because
Yeah.
I perceive like entrepreneurship is just a to me it's a bit of a means of an end, right? Like with my chaplaincy training I'm trying to provide spiritual care through what I do.
Yeah.
And the question is like, okay, if you want to scale compassion, how would
Yeah.
you do that? And I
Yeah.
feel like oftentimes it's about the mimesis of ideas and like,
Yeah.
how much can we push like virtuous ideas in a way that's a lot more accessible against a world of incentives in a world that are much more promoting selfish behavior, you know?
Mm.
So I feel I'm speaking in abstract because like that is the vagueness of my ideas right now. But I feel like that's where like traditional publishing, traditional news outlets like still hold that strong power of like being able to influence the way people think on a much larger population level.
Yeah. You know what's interesting? I think what you just described is more suitable for traditional publishing than self-publishing, in my
Mm-hmm.
opinion.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason why is that I think traditional people who look for books in bookstores and from traditional publishers are looking for big ideas. And so
Mm-hmm.
that's number four in my framework, the originality, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you sort of talking about scaling compassion. I
Mm-hmm.
don't know. I don't think I've seen that book concept done that much, if at all, right? So I think it's sort of a really beautiful concept to explore in a book length. And it's something that probably won't do as well self-published, because in my mind self-publishing is either for people with built-in audiences and they or memoir people who have a well-known name and maybe they
Mm-hmm.
just want to self-publish their memoir,
Mm-hmm.
or they're looking for a really technical book that they can Google and say, okay, how do I do this code or whatever. But
Yeah.
looking for very few of them are looking for big ideas like this in Kindle Unlimited. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah,
So who is your ideal client? Let me throw a question back for you.
you
for
know,
your coaching in your academy.
I mean, I think the people that make sense for me in terms of the people I've worked with are professionals, as you said, academics. But the people I also like gravitate to are the creatives, you know.
Mhm.
So honestly, I'm not sure that I've narrowed down which one I want to target first or only,
Mhm.
But yeah, so I think ultimately I'm targeting people who want to understand how to write a book that brings value to the audience that they're aiming for,
Mhm.
but not do it in a very sort of myopic way. I want them to understand.
Mm. Mhm.
I want them to understand the framework of publishing, which is editorial, the writing part,
Mhm.
design and production, which is the making part, right? The
Mhm.
building of the book itself,
Mhm.
and then sales and marketing and distribution. And I just want them to think about all those things right up front.
I see. So is a big idea a prerequisite, or are you working with folks with all sorts of levels of ideas?
Uh that's a really good question. I mean, I think I'm working with people who have anywhere from the really big ideas to maybe atomic habits type ideas, which is not a big idea,
Mm-hmm.
right? As big as much as well as that book did, Atomic Habits by James Clear.
Mm-hmm.
All he did was he took research that's been out there and really, I think, successfully simplified it and put it into frameworks. We can talk about frameworks as well.
Mm-hmm.
So people who are willing to take biggish ideas and put them into simple frameworks, or to
Yeah.
create big new ideas. So yes, those are the
Mm.
people I'm going for. I'm not necessarily going for people trying to how to learn,
Mm-hmm.
Chat GPT 4, right? And
Right. That's
here's
too
some
niche.
prompts, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's sort of not the writer I'm going for.
Got it. And well, the aside about James Clear, like his success is because he was an OG newsletter,
Exactly.
bajillion subscribers person, right?
Yeah.
Which is a very admirable path, but also very challenging,
Yeah.
for many of us.
Yeah.
So you were saying about a lot of how your art of coaching is shaping ideas, and I'm seeing a parallel between like marketing positioning and the
Yeah.
book proposal, right? Like these are essentially analogs in the publishing world.
Yeah. Yeah. And I actually want to ask you a little bit, because you went from neuroscience, and I saw in your bio that you did marketing as well.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't, I mean, I've been involved in the marketing aspect of the book, because as an acquisitions editor, you have to be involved in all of it.
Mm-hmm.
But you're absolutely right. I think that the book proposal is effectively a marketing document, because it when in the world of traditional publishing, you
Mm-hmm.
are really trying to sell the publisher on this concept
Mm-hmm.
as a product,
Mm.
right?
Yeah.
And so yes, so in that sense, it's ultimately really what it is.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I mean, how did you go from, I guess, the science
Mm-hmm.
to marketing, and
Yeah.
how are you applying that knowledge
Mm-hmm.
to the work you're doing now?
Oh, thanks for the question. So, very much like you, I was in academia, and then I was looking for a real job because like I didn't want to go into research anymore. Lots of incentive reasons, separate pod, in order to go into that rabbit hole. But then one
Yeah.
path that I went down is through working in scientific communication strategy for drug companies. So very much like any product, drugs also are marketed in all sorts of ways. And one of the main ways is to make sure that the correct messaging is available in publications, in the way that companies are educating doctors and patients, etc. So that's how like there's a lot of like scientific background and thinking underlying a lot of the marketing that's done by drug companies. And they hire nerds like me can like essentially make sure that everything is factually accurate
Yeah.
because of the high levels of regulations by FDA,
Yeah.
while also being able to understand the target audience's understanding of the field, because it's not just about the drug A is better than drug B.
Yeah.
Because if that's the case, that's an easy sell. Oftentimes, every drug has its pros and cons.
Yeah. That's right.
So then how do you market it? Are you marketing it based on the drug itself? Are you marketing it based on the patient supportive services you're providing with the drug? That's where it blends back into traditional marketing and positioning and all the different strategies that you would do for marketing any product.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's why I'm like I'm an accidental marketer from a scientist background.
Yeah. Yeah. You know what's kind of funny though, and you probably would remember this, that all peer-reviewed papers, in a
Mm-hmm.
sense, you kind of learn to sort of pitch it in a way that, okay, yeah, we didn't answer all the questions, but here's what we did answer.
Exactly.
here's why
Yes.
here's why we did a little bit more than the other guy.
Hmm.
There's always that positioning, even in quote unquote, pure science research.
Yes. Which is very funny because I feel like that's, it has a political speak, there's often this whole like, what are facts? And I'm like, exactly, what are facts?
Yeah,
You actually do need to understand. It's a lot
that's
of
also another
like
fun.
storytelling. Yes. And again, well, whoops, we're turning it into a different kind of podcast again. But yeah, like so going back to book publishing, so I feel like the takeaway or the call to action for
Yeah,
anyone listening is that if you're a creator, like think about how of course we each have a little niche, but like think about the larger impact of your ideas that can apply to a much wider audience, it sounds like. And also if you have a lot of complex ideas, think about how to put them in simpler frameworks, because that's much more likely to have mass market appeal.
yeah, yeah. And I think James Clear is a great example.
Mm-hmm.
I actually, I honestly, I think it's worth pushing back a little bit on the idea that his success is largely based on his audience, because
Oh.
I would say that reading that book,
Mm-hmm.
he just brilliantly puts together the frameworks. To
Mm.
me, he does what I fell in love with reading Malcolm Gladwell, Outliers,
Mm-hmm.
and he's a brilliant writer, but it just was a lot of work to sort of understand the frameworks because it's layered in so much prose.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas with James Clear, it's no pun intended, it's much clearer, right?
Yeah, I know. Is it
What
like one of
the
those that you're born
yeah.
into your name sort of situations? It
Yeah,
is
but
very clear.
it's very clear
Mm-hmm.
what it takes to build habits.
Yeah.
And actually, he does sort of give you that original quote, which is, what does he say? He says, "You don't rise to the level of your goals; you fall to the level of your systems." So that's
Yes.
the underlying framework. There is that don't make goals; just try to build habits, build
Mm-hmm.
systems. Just do things daily, and then eventually you'll reach your goal.
Yes. I think it's one of those aphorisms where it's like easy to
Yeah,
say, actually very hard to do. Ah,
yeah,
you
yeah,
can also
and that's
buy it on
because
a
people.
pen.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. So it sounds like folks need to be informed. And I think the part that's really interesting to me as I'm watching my friend going through a traditional publishing journey is that the design and part is actually really hard. And she's a designer by trade. So I was like we were both kind of surprised because you're kind of like thrown in there, and sometimes it's not really clear what is the best approach to format your book, etc. So can you speak more about that?
So what stage is she in? Is she has she submitted the manuscript already, or this is
No,
the
just in the beginning stages.
oh, okay. Yeah. Well, if anyone's gone to college and they've had to write papers and they've had to do all the formatting and the references and citations,
Mm-hmm.
it's a pain in the neck. So
Mm-hmm.
I don't envy my authors. The only thing I can say to that is there's software out there.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, most of my authors have used Word, but I think there are better software out there that'll help simplify that process.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Is
That
do you have any recommendations? I use Vellum on the Mac. Pricey, but it does make pretty ebooks. But it works like a Mac in that there's not that many formatting options. You kind
yeah,
of have to fit their mold.
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
No, I don't know too many. I mean, I've heard of Scrivener.
Mm-hmm.
I've heard good things about it, and I know a lot of my sort of math and physics authors use LaTeX or LaTeX,
Mm-hmm.
wherever it's pronounced, which is sort of a more of a
Oh yeah, if you have a
yeah,
mathematic.
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
If you have a lot of equations and things like that, uh, those are good for formatting
Mm-hmm.
a book.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, no. Otherwise, no. I really don't have too many recommendations about manuscript prep itself.
Okay. So far our imaginary person Scott, like let's just pretend that they found actually I think we've never really asked a question like which is answered a question, which is how do you find an agent?
Yeah, yeah. Well, so part of what I want to do, and this is a journey,
Mm-hmm.
and that's the beautiful thing about being a creative is that you don't have to present everything at once. But part
Mm-hmm.
of what I will have is a directory of book coaches, people who can help you, maybe
Mm-hmm.
ghostwriters, even
Mm-hmm.
um, agents. But I just answered this question to someone today, which is how they asked, "How do you find an agent?" And I said, "It's really, really hard.
Right. It's like
Um,
you're an actor. It's like no one signed up for this. It's something
really
I
hard.
feel like I'm an actor. I'm looking for an agent. What the heck?
Yeah. It honestly, they find you. I think it's really,
Oh.
yeah, yeah. It's
Hmm.
tough. It's tough to approach an agent, and the agent wants to work with you because they want the people that like you need them
Mm-hmm.
more than they need you,
Mm-hmm.
right? So an agent wants to work with the best of the best.
Right. Because
Um,
they get a cut, right? I
they get
think.
a cut. They
Mm-hmm.
get a cut.
How many percent do they usually take of the
Usually about
advance?
15%,
Okay.
15%, not just the advance, but everything, right? So
Everything.
the royalties, yeah, just in
Oh,
perpetuity.
wow. Okay. I didn't know that.
Yeah, yeah, not just the advance.
Okay, so you better be a good bet because they want that
Yeah,
15% to be a
15%.
hefty
Yeah.
amount, right?
Yeah, and it's actually, I hopefully I'll have a better answer in a few months,
Mm-hmm.
because now I'm sort of talking to more agents, trying to figure out how do I advise my students, my clients,
Mm-hmm.
finding an agent. Because you go to most agencies, the agent will say, "I'm not currently accepting new clients at this time,"
Mm-hmm.
which is almost true. It's true in the sense that their goal is to work with the same client and get more books from them
Mm-hmm.
rather than finding 10 clients, right? They would rather get 10 books from one client than one book from 10 clients.
Yeah, so that which is interesting, right? Because I think this relates back to the whole credibility piece, and I feel like that's why I advise my clients it's we're in it for a long haul. Like because if you want to build credibility, and you want to be seen as a sure bet, you need to have the longevity and interest in the thing that you're talking about. So make sure that whatever you want to write about is something that's true to your heart.
Yes, yes, yes. And so I think, you put yourself out there,
Mm-hmm.
and you do the work. You're on Twitter, you're on LinkedIn, you're
Mm-hmm.
on Medium, you're on Substack. I think, which is probably the smartest way to go now if you want to be an author,
Mm-hmm.
is to do a newsletter
Mm-hmm.
like James,
Mm-hmm.
like others, and show that you have the gift of writing, you have the gift of building an audience,
Mm-hmm.
and I think agents will approach you. Now,
Mm-hmm.
if you're impatient, or if you can't wait and you have a book and you're ready to go and you think an agent will take it, I mean, the hard way of finding an agent is going to the different. Well, actually, the best way is to go to people like you have a friend who has an agent,
Mm-hmm.
right? Go to
Yep.
people you know who have agents and
Mm-hmm.
have and get an introduction, even
Yeah,
if
so
that
that's what I
agent, yeah,
think is
yeah,
probably the secret, well, I don't know, the
it's
backdoor way.
referrals,
Yeah, is who you
yeah,
know.
yeah,
Hmm.
yeah, that's right.
So
So
practical tip
referrals,
is actually the call to action is
yeah,
make more friends
make more friends.
and then find a friend who's published a book and then like of course like demonstrate that you are a trustworthy person and you have a great idea, then get an introduction.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Hmm.
And one thing that you and I spoke about this when we first spoke a few months ago, which is community. And
Hmm.
we were talking about small batch community, but I have this thesis that the modern world really is going to function a lot on these communities. They give you so much access.
Hmm.
So I've had access to some really big names in the creative world, you and I, right? And that's because we're in the same community, that we have
Hmm.
some sort of shared sort of bond over this
Hmm.
philosophy of small bets.
Right.
I'm in another community of Black parents who are entrepreneurs, right?
Oh,
So
wonderful.
I have a bond with them, and I've been connected with VCs and big.
Hmm.
So it's a beautiful thing. So join a community, I think, is the,
Yeah.
the takeaway, and join writing communities. You might
Hmm.
find people who already have agents and who are connected, or you might even find some
Right.
agents in these communities.
Exactly, yes. And yeah, I have another friend who is working on a religious book and then she's like, here, Excel sheet of every agent. And I'm like, oh, neat, thanks. So I think it is like through like, finding folks who are a little bit ahead on the path, who you admire, and then again, like demonstrating you also have good ideas, that will help a lot to get to the next step in the journey.
That's right. Yep.
Mhm. Yeah, I feel like I hope whoever's listening isn't too like scared off by traditional publishing. There's definitely a lot of moving parts here. I'm wondering, like, you spoke about the 7-item framework.
Yep.
And it sounds like you're going to provide everyone with the information about each steps and then like what you gotta watch out for, etc., so that you are best positioned once you get the book deal.
Yep.
So what do you anticipate to be challenges for someone who's going through the process once they get a deal in place?
Well, I think the biggest challenge is I would I would allude to what you just said, which is some people might be scared off. And
Mm-hmm.
the big challenge is it's not for everyone.
Mm-hmm.
So I want hopefully to have people decide right up front, do I want to do traditional publishing or do I want to do self-publishing? Because
Mm.
it can be frustrating if you want to do traditional publishing and you
Mm-hmm.
don't meet some of this criteria, you don't have much of an audience,
Right. And you spend too much time.
spend too much time, right? And
Mm-hmm.
trying to sell yourself, right?
Mm-hmm.
And really, what you could do is either self publish or you could say to yourself, let me just write, let me just put some long form content out there in newsletter form, let me,
Yeah.
in
Mm-hmm.
LinkedIn post or something else, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so sometimes it's just not the right time. I mean, I think in a sense it's like a marriage, right? You the other person doesn't want you because they
Mm-hmm.
don't feel you fit whatever they're looking for.
Mm-hmm.
You shouldn't take it personally.
Mm.
It's really it's about what they're looking for, you know.
Yeah.
And what you should do is spend more time to say what am I looking for? Is it sales? Then maybe I could learn how to do my own digital marketing and
Mm-hmm.
sell my book self-published.
Yeah.
So that would be the first thing. But the second part is if you do think that you have the criteria for self-publishing, I
Mm-hmm.
mean for traditional publishing,
Mm-hmm.
you should definitely and my course will teach this, understand the various aspects of positioning.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So, if you can give us a TLDR,
Yeah.
what are the components of the positioning?
Yeah. So, we have what it's called a prospectus, and then you do the table of contents.
Mm-hmm.
And the prospectus includes why are you writing this book? Who's the audience?
Mm-hmm.
What are the competing titles? That's really a big part of it too, because
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
that gives the publisher a sense on how to think about the book based on the market,
Mm-hmm.
right? And
Right. Something that
then, yeah,
I often like underthink about, and I see others don't think too enough about too, is the how you do compare to your competitors or what's already out there.
that's right.
Hmm.
That's right. And that's a stumbling block for a lot of people because they want to pick the biggest book
Mm-hmm.
and how they're better than that. But really,
Mm-hmm.
that's not what the publisher wants to see. The publisher wants to get a sense of how that book was positioned, not so much
Mm.
how well that book sold and why your
Right.
book sell more.
Yeah. So I've noticed, okay, in terms of positioning, right, that similar books tend to come out in a batch. So it seems like different publishers. I mean, like, I'm gonna pick one that I noticed is it is about like AAPI, like the Asian hate situations, which
Yeah, yeah,
ongoing,
yeah,
but there was a time when it was really bad. Like suddenly
yeah.
there's like a million like books about crime in H Mart, etc. So
Right,
so there
right.
seems to be some trends that publishers are looking for. So, how does one work with that?
Oh, that's a good question. I think that's sort of an output of. I think it's an outgrowth of the gatekeeping, right? I
Mm,
think I think it's sort of easy for the gatekeepers to say, okay, this is what people are buying now. They're buying books on DEI or they're buying books
mm-hmm,
you know, on different topics.
mm-hmm,
Let's publish that. I don't know if it's the smartest way to do things, but the reason why they do it is
mm-hmm,
because book buyers are thinking the same way. So book buyers are that's just a shorthand for bookstore owners,
Mm.
people who buy books for bookstores,
Mm-hmm.
right? And even librarians. They're also looking for the same things, right?
So is it possible to, because I think that the dilemma is like, does one want to like look out for trends and try to go along with that train, or is it better to just, stay original, stay the course and not adapt to it?
You ask really good questions. That's a really good
Tell us the
question.
answers.
Honestly, I mean, this is the easy answer, right? Is do what's authentic to you.
Yeah.
However, you can
Asterisk.
also do that and still sort of ride a trend, right?
Mm.
Right.
Hmm.
So what's authentic to you, you might
Mhm.
be able to sort of angle it in a way that fits a trend.
Mm.
Um, if you feel you can, and that's a skill. I don't have a good way of how to do that. I may incorporate it into my materials,
Mm-hmm.
but I think if it doesn't feel authentic to you to do that, you shouldn't do that.
Mm.
You really can sense how like what you're good at, what your platform is good at, what your topic, what you're credible with also fits within a trend and you want to write about that
Mm-hmm.
from a financial and sort of perspective and
Mm-hmm.
a problem solving perspective, it makes sense.
I see. Ooh, this is a,
There's
a lot of
a
things
lot.
for a person to think about.
There's a lot. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I'm hoping that whoever that wants to be a traditionally published author, like it has the passion to in order to overcome like so many of these hoops that you have to jump through.
Yeah. 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 And I think at the end of the day, hopefully, and I keep going back to this, it's not no, it's not a, yeah, it's not something that everyone has to do.
Mm-hmm.
So, but yeah, and in fact, I'm not sure why some people feel like it's so necessary, right? And
Yeah. So
I'm actually surprised about how much people want to be traditional. Even people who already have big platforms and big names, they want
mm-hmm.
to write a book and they get excited about their book.
Mm-hmm.
It's like a
It feels
validation.
nice.
Yeah,
Exactly.
it's a validation.
Yeah, and I think it's very much about how much of whatever satisfaction you're getting from a traditional publishing can you replicate on your own, right? And it
Right.
sounds like a lot of the marketing sales you're gonna have having to done that yourself anyway, so that's all out of the picture. Printing and all of that now, Kindle and many of these services
Yeah,
take care of that for you.
sure do.
So I think it's the distribution and maybe translation, international translations, and all of that comes in.
Definitely. I mean, so a publisher can handle that or an agent can handle that if you
Hmm.
have an agent.
Yeah.
That's probably much harder to do for a self-published book.
Hmm.
Yeah.
So, I recall that you have your own publishing press for children's STEM books.
So I had an e-commerce business where I
Mm-hmm.
was distributing the books,
Mm-hmm.
other people's books. And I think maybe what we had discussed was that I wanted to publish my own children's STEM books.
Mm-hmm.
That is not something I'm pursuing right away. I'm going to do the book coaching first, the
Mm-hmm.
academy first, but I think eventually I do want to publish my own children's STEM books.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, the reason why I ask is because I'm also like curious, like how does one start a publishing press and what are the components of that? Because it sounds like okay, if I want to start publish, I might as well be my own press then.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's a question I'm trying to figure out myself. I've bought a
Mm-hmm.
lot of books. And there's not a lot of books out there about how to start your own publishing press,
Mm-hmm.
start your own publishing company.
Mm-hmm.
Um, really, like if you want to start your own music label, if you want to start your own company that collects IP, it's
Mm-hmm.
probably the same thing where you get a few, you got to hustle and get a few people to sign with you initially,
Mm-hmm.
and then you get a few successes and it attracts people. So
Right.
that's the goal for me to either write the first few books
Mm-hmm.
because I do have some credibility in this space. So
Mm-hmm.
that would be my path. I would write a few books, maybe write the first series
Mm-hmm.
on some topic in engineering. Then I would get friends of mine to write for my press,
Mm-hmm.
and then the success of those first few books hopefully will attract more people to publish under my imprint.
So, and then the press, it sounds like traditionally takes care of like a little bit of the marketing, the sales and distribution, and the actual production part of the book.
Yeah, and so to clarify, I think the model I want to do is what they call book packaging, where I would do the editorial part of it and I would sell it
Mm-hmm.
to a bigger press
Mm-hmm.
and have them take care of the sales distribution and
Mm-hmm.
marketing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Got it. Okay. So to summarize, so if you are a creator who's like building your audience, then good news is that you are already doing a lot of what traditional publishers used to offer. And that and that you're doing the audience building and being able to do a lot of the printing and production on your own nowadays with all the tools available. However, if you have like a larger idea or like a very compelling framework for complex ideas, then you can consider going down the traditional publishing path. You can work by yourself without an agent and go for academic press, or you can find an agent through knowing someone who knows someone, and that will allow you to work with traditional press. And
Yeah.
then there's even more steps after that, and
Yeah.
you can work with Jay.
Yeah. And
Mm-hmm.
then I think the one thing that we didn't touch on much is that we touched on it a little bit. I think maybe you're doing some of this work, but there are a lot of people now that are doing book coaching.
Mm-hmm.
And so I want to be the person that points people to the resources.
Mm.
I don't think I'm going to be doing a lot of one-on-one coaching. That is that is not
Oh.
the most joy. I'm going to do a recorded course. I'm going to have
Mm-hmm.
resources and point people to the right in the right direction. But
Mm-hmm.
there are a lot of people who work one-on-one
Mm-hmm.
at a at a healthy cost, to help you write the book and help you put it together, and it's called hybrid publishing, right? So these are people who, if you want to self-publish, they can put it together for you. Some of them are even offering ghostwriting services.
Mm-hmm.
People who don't want to write a book, they just have an idea, the right idea, they have the credibility,
Mm-hmm.
and they can do the outline, and they just need help with writing the book.
Mm-hmm.
So that's another path, and I think those are things people should consider as well.
Yeah, definitely. So yes, I myself, I enjoy coaching clients who want to write the book themselves. Like, no, unfortunately, I do not offer ghostwriting at this point. But the idea is I'm blending neuroscience and chaplaincy frameworks to help you get into a writer's mindset and to be able to write authentically from both your technical credibility and also the amount of care that you want to provide in showcasing the work through like creative means. So I think one thing that I specialize in is helping folks who are extremely multi-talented, who in fact tend to have too many projects going on at the same time, and book writing is one of them. So what I can do is provide the accountability and focus as well, so that they're able to complete this project to their satisfaction.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And I know we're almost out of time, but I want to maybe say two more things. One
Mm-hmm.
is sort of related to your work, and that is, I think ultimately what I want people who want to write books to think about could be pointed to this famous quote by Naval Ravikant, which says,
Mm-hmm.
"Play stupid games, win stupid prizes." Right. So if you want to be traditionally published, almost primarily for the goal of status, I think you're going to have a hard time really with the process, because the process is not perfect. It can be frustrating, right? Publishers
Mm-hmm.
have limitations on
Mm-hmm.
what they can do for you. You might want an author tour because
Mm-hmm.
you focus on the status, right? And the
Mm-hmm.
author and the publisher has to consider ultimately, the costs, right?
Mm-hmm.
The P&L is on them, right? So regardless of whether you're traditionally publishing or self-publishing, I always think it's really healthy to do things for the right reason, and the right
Mm-hmm.
reason almost always to serve.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it's always to serve. So that's
Mm-hmm.
the one thing I'm going to say. The second thing is I wanted to mention that and I had mentioned this to you probably a few weeks ago. I want to do an I'm starting a newsletter called Dance with Your Fear. And you said something earlier, how you're trying to learn how to scale compassion. And I
Hmm.
think that's really what I want to do with that newsletter. It's sort of a meta, me trying to create things in public. That's sort of what I haven't been doing. I've been sort of doing work that people hired me to do. Now
Hmm.
I'm doing work that I'm telling myself I'm going to do. No one told me I have to do it, but I'm
Hmm.
doing it. And there's a fear to that, right? It's frightening. and
Indeed.
and so I'm I want to help people as I'm helping myself dance with
Hmm.
that fear of
Hmm.
creating in public and being vulnerable.
Yeah. That's beautiful. So I will drop the link to your newsletter with this video. And please tell us where else we can find you.
So LinkedIn is where I'll probably be doing most of my commenting online.
Hmm.
J&A Matthews. Same on Twitter, J&A Matthews. I love this website called Polywork. It's a sort of a social media platform. I'm going to be collaborating with people there as well. And all of that you can find them on jnamatthews.com. I do have the URL dancewithyourfear.com. So once that newsletter is set up, if you put that in, it should, or it might be dancewithyourfear.substack.com.
Hmm.
I think that's mostly where you can find me. And if you want to email me, I should have a link on my website to email me.
Yeah. And so what kind of folks should reach out to you?
Yeah, so if you are someone who's written a book before and you were disappointed with the results and you want to have a better understanding of what it
Hmm.
takes to write a successful book, if you want to
Hmm.
be honest with yourself and work with me I can show you how to position yourself in a better way. I can
Hmm.
work with um, disappointed exist authors, people who've written books before, or if you've never written a book before and you have enough of a platform, and if you have a big idea or a way of making big ideas more accessible,
Hmm.
those are the type of people that I think will benefit from the work that I'm building.
Fantastic. Yeah, and it sounds like everyone should be reading Dancing with Fear because I think fear
Yeah,
is something
I
we
think that's
we
for
all
everyone.
have.
I think that's for everyone. Yeah.
Yes, thank you so much for your time. I really enjoyed the conversation. I feel like you're like I think a lot of folks might be like, just tell me the secret to getting a book deal. And they're like, just do XYZ and you'll get it. And your answers in today's conversation is the truest expression of what it really is like. It's like you said, like stupid games to the prizes.
Yeah.
And like, lots of hurdles and then really truly figure out what you want from the whole process so that you will have an enjoyable time.
Yeah. 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 That's absolutely right.
Mhm. Great. All right. So I'm going to end this recording and I hope to see you all in the next conversation.
Thank you.